Good afternoon from our studios here at Kokomlemle in Accra. Thank you for joining us for Joy News today. Ahead in this hour, opposition NDC calls for an audit of the newly compiled voters register. The Social Welfare Department wants to reduce orphanages in Ghana to just 50, whilst encouraging families and communities to take into foster care deprived and destitute children and, if possible, adopt them. In business, Bank of Ghana directs new staff of all financial institutions must be vetted by police as it moves to check rising fraud cases. All this and more within the next hour. Stay with us. The details, and the opposition NDC is calling for an audit of the newly compiled voters register. Director of Elections for the NDC was addressing a news conference which just ended.
Ghanaians will recall that during the registration exercise, we had cause to draw the attention of the Electoral Commission of wrong registration figures they posted in the Ashanti region and other places. These deliberate manipulation of figures, which has been described as mistakes, would not have been noticed but for the vigilance of our agents and executives across the country. The phenomenon is not only unacceptable but very indicting on the Electoral Commission. Now, we have what we call the NDC data versus EC data. Ladies and gentlemen, we have discovered discrepancies in the data we collated and that of the EC, some of which the EC has referred to as mistakes emanating from reports submitted by their officers from the regions. Interestingly, while these mistakes are over-reporting figures in our opponents' strongholds, they are under-reporting figures in ours. In the Ashanti region, for instance, the EC has so far reduced figures they initially published by over 40,000 following our diligence. There are more corrections to be made to the Ashanti figures that we shall engage the Electoral Commission to correct the anomalies. In the OT region, the EC underreported the figures by 10,127 at the end of phase 2. We drew the attention of the EC, but they continue to publish the wrong figures. At the end of phase 4, the EC underpublished OT figures by 14,124. So EC had 22,109 and NDC had 226,109 and the NDC had 240,233. Our continuous engagement with the regional EC office has resulted in a current deficit of 1,079. So as we engage them and draw their attention, but there's still a deficit as at the end of phase 6. We expect nothing short of total correction of the figures from OT, because we are all getting the figures from the same source. Start of day, end of day, we take it, we scan it, we do the analysis, we check. So at the end of the day, we must all get the same results.
Now, political scientists have described as disappointing the Electoral Commission's admission it has thousands of minors and foreigners on the newly compiled register, a situation they warn creates more acrimony among parties and other stakeholders prior to the polls in December. Patrick Stevenson, research analyst with Imani Africa, told Mamavi Uswabwaje on the AM show the EC was better off updating the previous register, while the budget was rather used to improve the work of the National Identification Authority and the Births and Deaths Registry.
The EC's claim that this has been successful has not been based on any superior metric or any superior reasoning. You don't decide after the fact that what you have done is successful or otherwise. We should know what you intended to do, right from get-go. I should also say that the idea that it's difficult, it's challenging for us to read minors off of the register. I don't think it's that complicated at all, because whatever the Electoral Commission is going to do now is what should have been done before. And it's one of the views that we have held and advocated for throughout this entire period, that for anybody to turn 18 years old and get registered on the register, if we even devoted about even 10% of the resources that went to the Electoral Commission for this exercise and double or triple the capacity of the birth and death registry, and they are building superior biometric systems and systems that are up to date, they should be in the position to tell us who's turning 18 years old in the country or not. And that becomes a primary data that the Electoral Commission. Right?
A senior political scientist with the University of Ghana, Dr. Ali Dusedu, encouraged the Electoral Commission to build consensus as quickly as possible through IPAC to reduce the mistrust that has been created between the Commission and the parties.
One of the selling points for the EC's justification for the conduct of a new voters register was the fact that the old register had a lot of foreigners. Actually, they called it the ECOWAS register and not a Ghanaian register. It had a lot of minors who were not legally qualified to vote, having their names in the register. So, but also there was a point that they made about the fact that they needed to add a third security feature, rather than just using the term, the biodata. They needed to add the eyelashes or whatever it was to strengthen the security system of the registration process, and for that matter, the complete voter register that we're going to have. About 38 down the line of registration and violence and deaths and beatings and destruction of properties, we were told that we still have foreigners in the voters register. And I was wondering, then what happened? The assurances, the deployment of troops in almost all the border areas to prevent people who are not Ghanaians coming in to register. What happened to all these things? The kind of divisiveness that was created by this restricted movement of people across one area to another.
Now, recent events to celebrate party agents of the National Democratic Congress in Asawase registered serious breaches of COVID-19 health protocols. Many sat in groups observing no physical distancing amidst partial wearing of nose masks. This comes as health authorities envisage a decline in the country's active cases. Regional Secretary of the party, Kwame Zu, says observing the protocols at the event became impossible with the overwhelming numbers. Nana Aljima has more.
Party members stood together, singing party anthem and participating in other activities. There were no running water or hand sanitizers at the entrance of the grounds. A casual observer can easily count people in nose masks. Seating arrangements were done for groups with no regard for physical distancing. Presentation of certificates did not go as planned, as many joined the chairman who took the bulk certificates for further distribution. This is contrary to earlier party directives. Here is General Secretary Kwame Zu.
His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, at every opportunity he has had, he has continued to admonish the public, particularly members of the NDC, to adhere at all times to the WHO COVID-19 safety protocols. So as a political party, we have done enough in terms of public education and admonishing the public to adhere to the safety protocols as published by the WHO.
The event, organized by the Office of the Member of Parliament for Asawase, Muntaka Mubarak, to honor party faithfuls in their stronghold in the region, was well attended by party executives. Regional executives including Chairman Nana Akwesi, Secretary Kwame Zu, among others, unlike some party supporters, were masked. The event, held in an open space for a small group, turned into a mini rally as many trooped in uninvited. Party Secretary Kwame Zu says turn up at the event is a wake-up call for the party.
We will continue to adhere to same and do everything practically possible. The emphasis word here is practically possible, to ensure that our members at all times adhere to the safety protocols. As a position I have emphasized, is practically possible. practically possible. You can study the environment. The practicality is called to drive our efforts. So we are doing the best we can to adhere to the protocols.
Member of Parliament Muntaka Mubarak says lessons have been learnt with regards to observance of protocols. He is considering a virtual campaign launch for the constituency.
You realize that this process, when we're doing Facebook Live, our aim is to go online with our campaign. We'll go online with our campaign, and I'm assuring you, it's most likely that we'll even launch our campaign in September, maybe first or second week of September, and we'll do it online. And we'll take our campaign online to ensure that we reach out to our people. People hear our message, people know what we are in for, without necessarily the large gathering and possibly spreading the disease. So that's what we intend to do.
Independent presidential aspirant Marricke Kofi Gane is questioning the independence of the Electoral Commission. Mr. Gane says the appointment of Jean Mentor by the current administration clearly raises issues on influence that they can have on her. The Electoral Commission has been criticized by the opposition NDC for compiling the new voters register, a decision which falls in line with the wishes of the NPP when it was in opposition. Speaking on Prime Morning on Joy Prime TV, the candidate said the real question is on how much the commission can be independent.
If you appoint somebody in a position, that appointment itself is influence, because you've just given that person a job.
But an Article 72 holders, office holders, tenure is secured. And so
it's not about the security of the tenure, it's about who puts you there. And if the person who puts you there is also somebody you need to work towards, or in some cases say no to, influence is always going to play a part in that. I mean, it's one of the things in our constitution that we feel needs to get changed, for example, because if I appoint you as unless you're one of the tough cookies, which is what we need. I mean, Obama came here and said we don't need tough men, or we don't need strong men, we need strong institutions. The truth is that we actually need some strong men with some really independent minds of thinking, and we can have them say, you know what, well, I know you appointed me, but this is a no and this is a yes. You know, but in the current circumstances, that does not exist. So I can't tell you whether Jean Mentor is being influenced by the government or not, but there exists influence. Whether he uses it or not, do I trust her? Well, we must in the circumstances.
But influence exists, as you say.
Influence is always going to exist. It's one thing for influence to exist, it's another thing whether it's being leveraged.
Reacting to Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia's announcement of a $200 million facility from the World Bank for job creation, Mr. Gane said the monies will be misapplied.
The money is a good idea. What they're going to use it for is another thing altogether. I haven't seen what... We've had this kind of money being given to us almost every other 3 years, my estimating, in the last couple of years. So, you know, we haven't seen anything tangible that has been done with this money. Yes, the money is always good, but what it's put to is always going to be the question.
So you're not confident that it would actually be used to do what it's meant to do?
I have never been confident.
To other stories now, and the police SWAT team has arrested 5 persons believed to be land guards. The SWAT team, Joy News understands, was notified about this illegal operation being carried out on the lands by residents. In May this year, the SWAT team arrested 16 land guards at this same area for terrorizing and attacking landowners. Nancy MF traveled with the team today, and here's how it went down.
Situated on this land, that's the Pantang Land here in Accra. You remember there's been a series of demonstrations by residents here and also officials and workers of the Pantang Hospital over what they say are threats on their lives. Over the years, there have been land guards sighted on this particular stretch. In May 31st, some 16 and 17 people suspected to be land guards were arrested by this police SWAT team, and today there's been another operation, and so we are headed to where exactly these people are on standby, and hopefully some arrests will be made. So you see some men currently on the run, running for their lives after the police suspect that they are land guards. We have seen 2 men running. This is an operation with more than 4 policemen I have counted so far. 3 have been able to grab the 2, whilst 2 are walking towards them. Land guards, and yes, you see one in blue, another man in white shirt. These are built men. All right, so you can see these men are being dragged into these vehicles. All right, so I've seen that 3 of these men, you can see them in your shots, are being arrested. These are suspected to be land guards. And yes, as usual, they will deny that they are land guards and that they are doing their work legally. But the fact that they decided to run even after being seen by the police officers speaks louder than words. Azak. Okay. So you can hear the men agitated and angry at the police for picking them up, suspected to be land guards.
Quite the incidents there that we captured. Away from the story though, the Social Welfare Department wants to close down orphanages and care homes and encourage children to be integrated into families, communities and for adoption. Director of Social Welfare Daniel Nona told Roland Walker on the AM show that from 5,000 orphanages first detected to be operating in 2007, the Ministry of Children, Gender and Social Protection has been closing them down to enable neglected children to be properly integrated into society.
Achieve with this?
Yeah, what we are trying to educate the public about is to tell them that the best place for the child is to live in the family. That's the best place, to promote that, for people to understand that the best place is for the child to grow in the family. Then we are also promoting the deinstitutionalization. We don't want children in the homes. So we are closing down those homes. And we are trying to also promote the fact that we want to have other alternative forms of care, which is the adoption, kinship care, and then we have the foster care. So we are also looking at the fact that the objective, what we also want to achieve is that we don't want the children, when we take them from the orphanage, we don't want them to be readmitted. We want to make sure that the child is permanently placed. We don't want them to be readmitted. And we want to encourage, the fact that we don't want people to be placing children. That should be the last resort in institutions. And it's only the social welfare department that is supposed to be placing children in such homes. So people should take note of this, that those who are operating the orphanages should not be placing children in the home just like that.
Now, foster care unit head Samuel Sanaglate encouraged well-meaning individuals and families to embrace new ways of accepting such children into their homes and adopt them when it is possible.
Our culture even allows us to already foster. I'm sure, Roland, when you were growing up, you may have lived with one of your uncles or aunties at some point, and that is all we are talking about. But we also acknowledge the fact that there are some children who do not have the privilege of living with an uncle or an auntie sometime or someday. So we want to take advantage of that culture that is inherent in us to train Ghanaians so they can take care of such children. So Roland, you are welcome to become a foster parent if you want to.
But if I want to adopt, what happens? Let's say I've temporarily been attached to this child, but I want to have that child as mine. How do we do the seamless transition?
That is dependent on a number of factors. It is not all the children that you see on the street or on the orphanage or children that's come into the alternative care system who are adoptable, who are children who do not have families or parents who still want them. Some of the children come into the alternative care because parents are either very sick, parents abuse them, poverty level the children back if the condition gets better. So
now, half a dozen newly born babies and mothers have died in the past 6 years at an island community of Faana in the South municipality of the Greater Accra region. That is according to the residents of the community trapped in between the sea and a lagoon with no access to healthcare. Other inhabitants and pregnant women continue to die and deliver in canoes as a result of traveling for over an hour to in-paddled canoes to access healthcare. Joy News' Henry Kwesi Bedu returned from the community and has more in the following report.
35-year-old Kwame recounting how her wife in 2018 delivered their first child in a canoe en route a chief's compound miles away from the island community.
I went fishing when my wife was in labor. She delivered on her way to the hospital in a canoe. The hospital is very far from where we live. I was afraid something might happen to my wife because the health center was a distance away.
His wife is lucky to have survived, but the fisherman is worried because his wife is now 7 months pregnant, expecting a second child soon.
I am now afraid that something may happen to my wife the next time she labors.
The only way to access the community is by canoe. With no electricity, water, and other basic amenities, pregnant women and other members of the community in dire need of health care will have to risk their lives by sitting in paddling canoes without life jackets for close to an hour to reach the nearest health facility.
There is no clinic here. There is no anything that can help an individual or people here so that they will be able to give birth. That is why normally when they're in a labor, people normally convey them in a boat to Chokome or the other side, that is Pamblos, before they can do deliver.
Rosemary Dasi is also a resident here. Her water broke in the dead of the night last year. With no canoes operating in the night and no traditional berth attendants, she had to wait for 4 hours to get a canoe, enduring severe pains and putting her life and the baby on the edge.
It started around 1 a.m. I felt funny, and my husband called his mother and grandmother. They confirmed my time was due. The canoe came around 5 a.m.
Rosemary delivered, but she does not want to relive the same experience.
I was in pain, and I couldn't sit in the canoe. After an hour, we got to the banks of the river, and I was told to quicken my steps. I got to the hospital and delivered safely, but it was a horrifying experience.
Pregnant women aren't the only victims here. Other sick persons face similar challenges too. They rely on first aid until they get access to canoes, which are not readily available.
Now, gov't Health Director Dr. Abna Oko has been reacting to this.
There's been several communications going back between Assembly and the Health Directorate, as well as with the national level. We've written for support. We've also written for support like votes to even make it easier for health staff to even go there more often. We are still in communications with the Assembly so that a compound in the near future can be built. So these communications are still ongoing.
All right, briefly, Doc, you said that you send two community health nurses go there twice every month to take care of children, especially give them life-saving vaccination. So what happens to other people who report with other conditions or ailments?
All right, so the community health nurses, what they do is that they give you first aid. So after the first aid, if the issue you come with is beyond what they can do, they will refer you to the closest facility, which is Chokomeche Zone or Botiano Health Center. What they do is giving you the first aid or the counsel of the first things you can do to prevent any fatality.
You're live on Joy News today with me, Daniel Dazi. Now, coming up in business, the Bank of Ghana has directed new staff of all financial institutions to be vetted by police as it moves to check rising fraud cases. More of this after the break.
Confusion at Soja Bar at Circle here in Accra. A government task force on retail trade has begun shutting down shops owned by foreigners without licenses. Close to 50 shops have been locked up so far since the team made up of police and military officers moved into the trade zones. There have been tensions brewing between gov't and some foreign operators across the country, with stores of some Nigerians being forcefully closed in Abosiokai some 3 weeks ago. Let's get the latest from Nana Yao Safo, who joins me with the latest from there. What's happening now?
And of the Nigerian Traders Association, the current speaking, I'll give you a few excerpts of that, and then we'll continue. The problem is 1 million. If it's 1 million, then we'll see whether you have it. If you don't have it, then you now have qualified for government. But I think they also have taken orders.
So I guess what's happening right now is a press conference. PSA wants us to listen into. The sound is not too good, so I'm going to try one more time and get in touch with PSA. If you can hear me, PSA, bring us up to speed on what the latest is.
They prefer you coming home to Nigeria. That's no problem. You can't force yourself to them. You cannot be forced to live in Ghana. We are not threat to this country. How do you know we are not threat to Ghanaian public? We are law-abiding citizens, and we are legitimate and business honest. Anything they think is a problem we are causing, they should come to us. Let us see. This issue of Hot and John, I think that is over now. We are moving forward. Thank you very much. All for one! All for one! All for one! All for all! Thank you very much.
So that was the voice of the president of the Nigerian Traders Association. He arrived here a few minutes ago, and he gathered the few Nigerian, the foreign retail traders that were around, mostly Nigerians. And he thinks, as the sentiment here, that they are going to talk to authorities and they are still arranging with them on the best way forward. But if that's a suspect, they don't mind going back to their state.
PSA, tell us what is required of these foreigners and how are the Ghanaian traders also reacting to all that is going on?
Well, the requirements, the major requirements and details are still unclear at the time, but they have been mentioned here by the PRO of the ministry that at least they should have lived here for quite a while. They should have also liaised with the gov't and the other heads on getting that authority or that license. Most of the traders who spoke here said they have acquired those, but apparently it is much more than that. They have opened room for people that may still have questions or retailers that may still have questions or may challenge the claims to come to the head office, and they may have their kiosk enterprise returned to them.
Thanks very much for the update. That was PSA Nanaya Osafo, our reporter there on the ground at Soldier Bar at Afriyie Ankrah, where we understand the Taskforce on Retail Trade is closing down shops owned by foreigners without licenses. We'll bring you updates subsequently on this story as it unfolds. In other news, the Bank of Ghana is directing financial institutions to have all their new staff adequately vetted by the police. This is to prevent the employment of fraudsters into the industry. It is part of several directives from the regulator to curtail rising fraud cases. George Afe has more.
The central bank, as part of these directives, is also asking all financial institutions to strictly monitor their staff on every transaction, as well as implement appropriate internal controls. To check the high rate of fraud, the various institutions are also being directed to review the working conditions and remuneration of staff based on aligned job functions. Know your customer systems at banks and specialized deposit-taking institutions should also be strengthened to help early detection and unusual transactions initiated on customers. Financial institutions are also required to install systems that would help track data on trends of all transactions on customers. The financial institutions are also required to install systems that would help better track trends on all transactions of their clients. For customers, the Bank of Ghana is advising them to be a little bit diligent and encourage them the use of electronic payment method that would have an audit trail of all transactions. Check printing houses are also not being left out of this, as the regulator has directed them to strictly abide by the Bank of Ghana's regulations that help check against the cloning of checks. The recommendations follow rising fraud cases in financial institutions, which hit 2,295 ending last year, representing a 5% jump over what was recorded in 2018. The report also showed that suppression of cash and issues relating to deposit accounted for the largest portion of fraud cases reported to the Bank of Ghana. These were valued at 160 million Ghana cedis. It also revealed that majority of these fraud were done by staff connected to these financial institutions. Now, this is coming at a time that the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, revealed that the recent mobile money fraud that hit majority of the banks were actually aided by internal staff. This has left many people asking whether the problem is about these staff not being paid well, or maybe they are just greedy.
Thanks for staying with us. It's now time to bring you sports. My name is Hans Mensah Ando. Chief Executive Officer of Accra Hearts of Oak, Frederick Moore, has reviewed the internal structures put in place to ensure the safety of their players. According to him, they are monitoring the strategies put in place by the FA and government to safeguard ahead of the resumption of football.
The leadership of the Ghana Football Association has been engaging government on the best safety measures to adopt for the return of football. One of the populist resolutions is that football could be played without supporters at match centers. Chief Executive Officer of Hearts of Oak, Frederick Moore, says his club on their own accord have their internal plans for the resumption of the game safely.
There's a possibility that we will start to play with our fans. If vaccination or therapeutics come along, that might change the equation. What I'm aware is that there's a provisional date. The government has not come out to remove sporting activities and all of those things. So it is only a provisional date that they've said. We have been planning, even without the provisional date, in getting our players into a situation where any time that the game is restarted, we can restart. We can kick on and move forward. So we are looking at what the FA is saying, the FA is doing, what the government is saying and what the government is doing. But we've also got our own timetable working in equilibrium with all of those discussions.
The GFA has communicated to the clubs players would need to be tested before they are permitted to play football. Mr. Moore reckons that is quite expensive for the clubs.
We all know the fact that the testing in Ghana is very expensive. And if you have to test 30 players plus 7 technical plus anybody else who has to be around the players, that could go into a lot of money. But I know the FA is also aware of it because everybody on ESCO is also a football person. So all of these things I'm sure will be factored in, and there will be a discussion at Congress, and then we can move forward. I'm confident. I'd like to look at the positive things that we can do and the positive comments that we can add as a club to the FA to make the FA, to put the FA in a better position for the success and goodness of Ghana football.
Today marks exactly 54 years Ghana won the only Commonwealth gold medal in the 4x100 meters relay. Okoadi, a survivor of that incredible achievement, tells George Ado Jr. how it all happened. And a full documentary airs later at 2 p.m. here on the Joy News channel. That's it for sports. There is more on myjoyonline.com/sports. My name is Hans Mensando. Many thanks for your time.
And this is where we wrap up today's bulletin of Joy News today. My name is Daniel Daze. Many thanks for joining us. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com.